Hey everyone, we're here today with some team members from both Figment and the Celo team, the C Labs team, to talk about the new Learn Pathway that's launching today. And so we're really hoping to discuss a lot of topics that are for developers today and people who are interested in the technical parts of maybe building on top of Celo, what you could do, how you can do it. And we also want to talk about Learn, which is a way for you to go from not really knowing anything about blockchain or Celo to getting started, and really your entry point, hopefully, into building new apps on Learn. And so in the beginning, we're first going to kick it off with just a quick overview of what is Learn, how can you get involved, and what's in it for you. And then we'll open it up for questions. Directly, if you have questions about specific development questions or questions for the C Labs team, we'll invite some folks up. So please ask questions down in the Ask Question section at the bottom, or you can put it in the chat. We'll be watching the chat. But Yannick, do you want to jump right in and share your screen and just kind of quickly describe to everyone what the Celo Pathway is all about, what we're hoping for people to do, and how they can participate?
Sounds good. Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, everyone. I'm Yannick. I'm a product manager at Figment, and I spend most of my time working on developer adoption for Web3, and I do that through Learn. So I'm sure a lot of you have already encountered Learn, looked at the website, but for those of you that are new, I'll make a quick presentation just so you know how we got here. Let me 1 second. How we got here and why we created Learn. So application, let's do it. Okay.
Okay, great. I can see your screen.
Perfect. Thank you. As some of you might know, Figment has been operating infrastructure for over 3 years now. And in 2020, we started developing developer infrastructure and developer tooling. And in the process, we realized that some of the major pains around building on Web3 protocols are around documentation and the actual educational content available. So what you see if you've tested out different protocols is that there's just no documentation standardization. You'll go from Swagger files for one protocol to Postman for another and to Gitbook for a third. That makes it really hard to discover new protocols, but also compare them. And once you've invested some time into one protocol, you don't necessarily want to try the new thing around that might be beneficial to you. And even when you've actually selected the protocol that you want to build on, you have very, very limited ways of actually pushing your skills to the next level, as there's limited amounts of tutorials and educational content out there for Web3 protocols. So Learn is really a way to solve this. On learn.figment.io, on our website, you'll see that we've aggregated and standardized all the documentation and the API reference of the protocols that we support in DataHub, our infrastructure service that you'll be using while doing the Learn Pathway. That allows you to easily compare protocols. You'll have information about each of them, what we call the 101 section, where you'll learn what you can build on those protocols, what makes them special, and some of their network specs like transaction speed, cost, and so on. The meat of Learn is the kind of incentivized learning and sharing experience. So you'll see that today we have over 50 tutorials offered on Learn across all the protocols that we support in DataHub. And we offer you a way to push your skills to the next level and earn tokens in the process. So that incentivized learning and sharing campaign is what we call the Learn Pathways. And that's what we're launching with Celo today. We've also launched pathways with Near and Secret Network in the previous months. So a pathway essentially allows you to go from connecting to a node, very basic, first step into venturing into a new protocol as a dev, all the way to deploying your first smart contract. So we're really trying to give you all the basics that allow you to then experiment and innovate. In the case of Celo, for example, you'll be able to earn up to $100 in cUSD for doing so. And what's interesting is that you do all those tutorials through Data Hub, our infrastructure service. So we're able to track your request and tell you if you've made a mistake, if you haven't done the tutorial correctly. So we're really able to guide you through your experience. And once you feel like you've accomplished enough and you know enough about Celo, for example, you'll be able to write your own tutorials, and we pay up to $500 in tokens for that. So basically a recap of what the Celo pathway will be. You will go from connecting to a Celo node using Data Hub. You will create your first Celo account. You will query the Celo network for a few information. You'll even post your first transactions, and then we'll help you write and deploy your first Celo contract. Once you're done, you'll get $100 in cUSD. And then we're open to new contributors. We'll be reaching out to some of the best devs that we know in the Celo ecosystem as well, but we're really welcoming submissions of new tutorials that will allow our community to go to the next level in terms of their skills while building on Celo. So overall, Celo is our newest pathway that we're launching. We have onboarded over 550 devs to Web3 so far. So we're hoping Celo is our next big gateway into Web3. So far, I think we've distributed over $75,000 in incentives. So we have even much more coming up with the Celo pathway. So I'll let Andy now give you a quick demo of the platform, just so you're comfortable with the flow.
Great, thanks, Yannick. So what I'm going to show you is what you will actually be going through as part of this pathway and what it looks like. So if you are familiar with sort of test-driven development, this might become familiar. So Yannick, can you see my screen?
Yep, you're good.
Great. So in Data Hub, there are different protocols you can use. I'm going to use Celo because that's, of course, what we're talking about today. So when you go in, you'll see this screen. And the important thing here is that if you're making a request, we'll show you some analytics about your request. But really what you want to do is scroll down to this tutorial section at the bottom. What you'll see above tutorials, though, is you can connect to the mainnet, you can connect to the test net. All that's fine. But really where we want to start with is this list of 5 tutorials. And when I mentioned, if you're familiar with test-driven development, each one of these, you'll click Start, you'll go through a series of steps, and then you'll click Verify to see if you've actually successfully completed the steps. So it's very simple, and you'll get feedback along the way. So I'm gonna go ahead and just click Start. It'll pop up a link right to this tutorial. And the tutorial takes you step-by-step from having nothing installed on your computer all the way to deploying a smart contract in 5 steps. And so there was a question I saw in the chat, if I've never programmed before, can I do this? We have definitely had people do that. If you know your way around the command line, of course you'll find this more familiar. But we've had people go from 0 to deploying a smart contract. And so our goal is we want to teach both Web3 developers who are familiar with other networks about Celo, but we also want to introduce new people. Maybe you've never worked a blockchain before, or you're just getting into coding. So we sort of welcome all of you. So getting back to what I did here is I went and I clicked Start. I went to this tutorial. There's step-by-step, what you should run at the command line, what it means, what everything's doing, all the way until you're submitting your first request. And so once you do that, to see if you did it correctly, you click Verify. And so, of course, I've done nothing, so I would expect this to fail. So let's see what happens. Oh, oops, something went wrong. I didn't submit any requests. So if this happens, don't worry about it. We have a link right here to our Discord, where there is a bunch of people just like you who are learning as they go. And so our community is pretty large. That we have people from Figment team in there, we have people from the Celo team in there, but most importantly, we have other people like you who are learning. And that tends to be the best place for you to get support, is other people who are maybe 1 or 2 steps ahead of you. You sort of think of that like peer-to-peer learning. So anyway, click on that link, jump in our Discord, and you get support. We also have a forum as well, where we have sort of FAQs, commonly seen errors to help you along your way. So the point of this is to say that we have this broken down into 5 steps. Each step along the way, you'll be doing coding and also verifying that you're doing things correctly. If you get stuck, there's support for you via real-time chat and also our forum. So that's how it works. So please, this is open now. Please get started, and we'll see you in the community. Okay, that's the end of the demo. So I think what I'd like to do now is we'll bring up Daniel and introduce Josh, and we can start going through some of the questions. So what we've done is that we've gone ahead and we've crowdsourced some questions before the meeting, but also we're collecting more in real time. So please, if you have any more questions, just go in the Ask Questions section at the bottom or put them in the chat, and we can address those. So here, I'll click the invite for Daniel. It should be coming up in a minute. Hey, Josh, while Daniel's coming up, you just want to quickly introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Josh. I'm working at C-Labs, helping build the Celo network. So I'm working at C-Labs in a developer relations capacity. So similar to Yannick, I'm really into education, like helping developers learn how to use Celo. Really teaching everybody how to use Celo, and also talking to developers and figuring out where developer pain points are and bringing those pain points back to the C-Labs team so we can really improve the developer experience across the stack.
Great, thanks, Josh. Hey, Daniel, welcome up. Do you want to do a quick introduction of yourself and what you're focused on?
Sure, thank you so much for having me. Let me know if you can hear me. Cool. So yeah, my name is Daniel. I am a service designer. I work at C-Labs, creating educational programs and promoting education across the board. So that's me. I'm super interested in sort of like onboarding a global crowd of developers into Celo. So that's sort of like my personal mission. Yep.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's jump into some of the questions that we got, but we'll start with the basics. Can you, for the people who are new to Celo, can you give a quick description or maybe a pitch of what is Celo, how could a developer might use it, and how do you approach building your community?
Sure. So Celo is a global platform for financial products that is mobile first, right? So hopefully people can build applications that use our live client to make sort of like the financial services that Web3 can unlock for everyone, accessible for anyone that has a phone, right, a smartphone. And on sort of like our approach to building a community, there's a couple of things to mention. One is that we really care about diversity of representation. At C-Labs, we have a product, for example, called Valora that we recently launched. And of course, for that product, we would like to see sort of like a global audience. But it's not just about sort of like the end user of these products, but also about the teams that build these products, right, on top of the Celo platform. So we care about like sort of like a global crowd, as I said before, a global crowd of developers, a global crowd of organizations that we can partner with, and of course, of like global solutions for on and off ramps, right? We make a massive effort in creating this ecosystem for people to build products that can reach everyone, I guess, globally again. And we do that. Josh just mentioned that we do a lot of listening, and that's true. We do a lot of listening. We do lots of research to understand sort of like the builders' needs and expectations, and sort of like their journey as they are trying to build something and get it off the ground and sort of like find market fit and get users. And so we care a lot about that and about that entire journey. And we start with experimenting with trying different ways to onboard people, this being one of them, right? We really care about how accessible it is to learn how to build on Celo, and to just improve on that, make it easier, make it faster for people to start building.
That makes sense. And so you mentioned mobile, and I've not really seen other blockchain projects really think about mobile in the way you have. Can you describe at a high level, what are the unique things that a developer could do with mobile using Celo?
Maybe that's a question for Josh.
Sure.
Yeah. I want to take a little step back and frame the problem a bit more, like why we are focusing on mobile so much.
Yes.
But yeah, then I can go into some of the specifics as to like how Celo is achieving these achieving a quality mobile user experience. So like one of my favorite stories I heard when I first joined C-Labs was, I'm coming from the Ethereum space. So I was teaching developers in the Ethereum space initially. And I was kind of wondering when I came on, I'm like, why is Celo a different layer one? Like, why couldn't we just do these things on Ethereum? And the founders actually did that research. So like, they were exploring if we could build a quality user experience for a mobile device on the Ethereum chain. And there were just a lot of things like hurdles that they were running into in terms of like paying for gas and ETH when we really want a stable coin for like a global payments network. So that you automatically need two currencies there. That was a barrier for explaining crypto networks to people just in the field. And when I say people in the field, I mean like people that are using mobile phones for their primary financial or payments infrastructure, like people in Africa, people in South America, like the global South. So we're really like, the mission of Celo is to create a financial system that creates the conditions of prosperity for everyone. The way to reach everyone is on lower end Android devices. I mean, that's the most popular computer that exists in the world right now. It's in the hands of the most people. So really like creating software that can run on those devices is really important. Another hurdle when doing user research in terms of people actually using the Ethereum as a payments network, sending tokens to addresses, like 40 character, just strings of letters and numbers. Like they're hard to remember. There are like ways to make this better on Ethereum, but it's still like not as good as people expect in terms of like abstracting away the crypto confusion. So it became clear that like a new layer one would be required. And in this process, like the C Labs team started building the mobile wallet and the protocol in parallel. So doing this, like we say, Celo had a full stack approach in terms of blockchain development. The wallet team was running into problems in terms of the user experience that people kind of demanded, and then what the protocol was allowing the mobile wallet to do. So there was this conversation between a mobile wallet team and a protocol team saying like, hey, we need to make some adjustments to our protocol in order to get the wallet experience that users really, really expect. So to address the like paying in multiple currencies issue, we have in our transaction object, you can actually specify a token to pay transaction fees with. And this isn't a modifiable list of acceptable tokens that can be updated through on-chain governance. So the community, like you guys may know that Celo is going to launch a new stablecoin soon. We currently have Celo dollars, but the Celo euro is coming in a few months.
Oh, nice.
Maybe sooner. So presumably, like people will want to be able to pay transaction fees in Celo euros. That can be added through the on-chain governance mechanism. And as long as there's like consensus, it's pretty easy to add. It's just going through the process. So that just makes it much simpler for people that are just using this as a payments network. You don't need multiple currencies. To make it easy to send to people you know, the wallet actually can connect to your contacts list, and we have this phone number identity mapping that will map a unique identifier for a phone number with an on-chain address. So Andrew, if I text you Celo dollars right now and you don't even have Valora, there will be a mechanism for holding those funds in escrow. And then when you register your phone number on our network, you'll have a balance in your Valora wallet. This isn't specific to Valora. This is like a protocol primitive. So other wallets can include this functionality. It's called Otis and our attestation service, but it's a really cool innovation to just make phone numbers compatible with Celo addresses.
Wow, very cool. So that's a tool that other developers could use with their apps as well, or is this just something that is mostly used by Valora?
Currently, it's mostly used by Valora, but there's no reason why other developers can't start building with this. Yep.
Okay, so that's a really good overview about how the team has approached mobile. And I thought it'd be kind of fun to dive into a specific example. We had mentioned there's an app called Impact Market. And I thought it'd be fun to use them as a case study to try to take some of these abstract ideas and kind of drive it home, because they're an app that has gone to market quickly with mobile. They make use of Valora. And so I don't know if Daniel or someone else wants to describe what this is and how it might be applicable to other developers who are looking at building on Celo.
Yeah, I just dropped the link for for their website on the chat. They are amazing. They are a team from Portugal that actually we met them a year ago on Prosper, one of our events in San Francisco, and they wanted to create an UBI system right back then. And we had a meeting with them where they were talking about some of their progress last week, and Marco, the founder, was talking about how Impact Market is becoming this tool to fight poverty, right? What they do is that they it's sort of like a combination of an UBI and philanthropy. So they sort of like funnel donations in cUSD to individuals. So individuals will get sort of like a little stipend every day. They started with a community in Brazil, and now they are in so many countries. Like if you review the website, you can see the locations. They have places in Southeast Asia and Africa, and I think that they just have right now over 10,000 beneficiaries, which to me is just insane, right? Like the amount of impact that a small team can have, right? Using the technology Celo is creating. That's a short overview. Yeah.
Got it. And so the way I understand it is that they made use of Valora in that they didn't have to worry about sort of those wallet functionalities. Instead, they integrated with Valora and used that as sort of the payment mechanism. They focused their app on sort of the crowdsourcing, the deciding who should get what, but the actual payment that was taken care of for them. And I think that was a big light bulb or a big aha moment for me, saying, okay, Valora is sort of a native part of this. It's something that you can build on top of, as opposed to having to recreate all the wallet functionality yourself, which is a huge a tripping point for most people.
Building wallets it's tricky, right? Because like you're handling private keys, and these are essentially holding. It gives the holder of the keys, the ability to transfer all these funds. And like, we're trying to build a system for financial inclusion for people globally. And like, it's feasible to imagine like people are using Valora, and like they don't have a bank account, they have Valora because this is what they have access to. And if these private keys are mismanaged, if something gets hacked, like these people's life savings could literally disappear. So part of this like full stack approach, we have a tool called Dap Kit, which allows you to easily interface with Valora via deep linking. So Valora can hold the keys and provide just like an easy interface for sending Celo dollars or Celo. And it will also allow app developers to sign arbitrary transaction data if you're developing your own DApp with like custom smart contracts or anything. So you can just use Valora for signing those arbitrary transactions, which is what Impact Market is doing. So they didn't have to develop a wallet. They don't have to worry about security. They're just using this Dap Kit SDK, which it's literally just like one file that I think it's less than a couple hundred lines of code. It's pretty simple, and it just manages this deep linking that we've made it easy for developers to get started. But you don't have to use Valora. Like if you want to use a different wallet, if you want to like as the ecosystem of wallets expands, or as we like develop more into like laptop based and just desktop computer based applications for more complex things like governance and voting, it's not a requirement to use Valora in your application.
Okay, and so your target market is obviously very skewed towards developing market. There's definitely a lot of focus on bridging, Web 2 devs that come from more of a traditional background to Celo and Web 3 in general. I'm curious to hear your approach there, and what's your pitch to not only attracting devs from an Ethereum ecosystem, but bridging them to Web 3.
Yeah, we've been talking about this a lot internally as well. Celo is, for those of you that are not familiar, Celo is a fork. Well, I'm calling Celo a cousin of Ethereum. There's a lot of shared code in terms of the client software, and a lot of the Ethereum developer tools work. So it's like, okay, we can easily have Ethereum developers come build on Celo. But when we look at the global population of developers, like most people are not blockchain developers, and we're really targeting a global audience. So if you look at most new developers in any blockchain ecosystem, they're going to be Web2 developers. So we need to have learning paths to make this technology accessible to Web2 developers. And the way we're doing that is by providing our SDKs that provide a familiar experience for Web2 developers. Our SDKs are currently written in Typescript, which like plays nicely with JavaScript, and all of the packages already developed there in the Ethereum space as well. So it's familiar for web developers. And we also provide services similar to things like Ethereum, where you guys are doing a great job of making like blockchain data available through an API. And that's like, I'd say one of the top requests we see from Web2 developers coming into the Web3 space is like, how do I just get the data? Because like running a node and participating in this peer-to-peer network is like kind of a foreign concept. Like developers can pick it up. It's just more things to learn. So providing these access points of like familiarity is really crucial to like getting Web2 developers up to speed in an incremental way where they can understand small chunks at a time. Because with blockchain development, there's a lot of new concepts all at once, like the private key cryptography, peer-to-peer networks, the token economics aspects. It's a lot.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. And what would you say is the number one thing that's been wowing new devs come into Celo?
Yeah, I think. Go ahead, Daniel.
No, I just had I just remember that I interviewed Bernardo, one of the developers at Impact Market, and what he said was that implementing their solution on mobile was just like a no-brainer for them, something that they couldn't do anywhere else. So that to me, I think, of course, Josh can talk more about the technical stuff, but that to me was sort of like, that blew my mind, right? When someone was talking about how simple it was for them to build something like this that sounds so futuristic in a way, right? Like they could potentially have one of the largest UBI experiments in the world right now, and they did it with like a couple of programmers.
So you're giving them superpowers.
Something like that, yeah.
Cool. I'll trademark that, but you can use it. Cool. And what would you say is the number one thing that is still lacking, or that comes up as a major pain point for new Web3 devs and new Celo devs?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is just like Celo is still new. So we're like still building our community, and I'm just like reflecting on coming from the Ethereum space where there's just like a ton of information. I mean, if you Google anything, if you're having any problems with anything, there's answers right there. And Celo mainnet hasn't been live for a year yet. I think in April we'll be live for a year. So like we're still getting like this base of projects built, and we're growing the community pretty rapidly. But like we're building this knowledge base along with it. Like I said, like education, I think, is one of the biggest things in terms of getting new devs on board. And fortunately, we can lean on Ethereum and like a lot of the tools there for educating developers on how Celo works. But there are some differences with Celo, and the community is different. I mean, we have a different mission than Ethereum. Like we have a different set of projects. People are attracted to our project for different reasons. I think our audiences are pretty different. So yeah, just like the community is not as developed as some of the other layer one blockchains that have been around for longer.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. In terms of the developer community, I'm trying to think about, okay, let's say I have an idea. What are the different, at a high level, at a block diagram level, what are the things I have to do? Do I need to develop a smart contract, and how do I write a smart contract? Do I need to develop a mobile app, and what language do I write a mobile app? What are the building blocks? What SDKs are available for me? Like, what is the whole scope of things I need to understand? Is it as simple as just deploying a smart contract? Or do you think there's multiple pieces at play here?
Yeah, I think it really depends on what you're trying to build. I think the Celo is pretty focused on like the financial payments aspect. And there are a lot of cool projects that are leveraging Celo as a payments network, and they're not writing any smart contracts. They're not really deploying any dApps. They're literally just using Celo to like grease the wheels of a payments network. And I'm thinking there's a project in Africa. I think it's M-Pesa. They're integrating with the network. PesaBase is the project on Celo. But they're essentially building a bridge between the M-Pesa network and the Celo network just to make payments easier. And a lot of my favorite projects are just these interface points with existing systems, because they're providing a payment rails for people that are like cheaper and faster than the existing system. I think transactions on the Celo network right now are somewhere around 1/10 of a cent or less even. It's very cheap, and block times are 5 seconds, so they're very fast. And it's global. So I've heard Valora is compared to, it's like, there was a recent article, it's like Venmo for crypto. But Venmo works in like a few countries. I don't even know. I only send money over Venmo to other people in the United States. But this is Venmo for crypto. It works globally. Anybody with access to an internet connection can access this payments network.
Okay. And so for these examples that you're thinking of, which really you don't have to write any smart contracts, is that what the Dap Kit library is for? Would that use that, or when would you use the Dap Kit library?
Dap Kit library would be more for like, if you're creating a custom dApp, you could just build an interface that does payments differently to highlight certain aspects of a payments network. But also, I've seen it used more for custom dApps where people are actually deploying their own smart contracts.
Right. Okay.
So maybe someone's building a DeFi primitive on Celo, or redeploying an Ethereum DeFi primitive onto Celo, and they want to build an interface to allow people to plug in their cUSD or Celo into the DeFi dApp. Dap Kit will be used to link that interface with the.
Okay. I want to get back to DeFi in a minute, but I just want to make sure we check off the sort of main SDKs or special helper tools that are available. So we talked briefly about Dap Kit, but there's also Contract Kit. Is that right? Yep.
So Contract Kit is an SDK that makes it easy to like manage connections to the Celo network. So you can just like point it at a Figment endpoint, and then you have this SDK that's pointed at Figment for reading data from blockchain or sending signed transactions to the chain. So along with that comes some utilities for like managing transaction signing and sending those transactions. Also like reading blockchain data associated with specific accounts, like balances specifically. But in the Celo protocol, there's this set of core contracts that include like governance, the attestation service they were talking about with phone numbers. There's some on-chain exchange that's managed through, or for like minting cUSD from Celo and new stable coins in the future. But like these core contracts can be accessed through Contract Kit, and it just makes it easy. So there's wrappers in the Contract Kit for all of these core protocol smart contracts. So you can facilitate people's interactions with on-chain governance, attestations, exchanges, and things like that. It just makes it easy for developers to access that.
Yeah, it sounds like there's a whole bunch of sort of batteries included type of things for people to get started. You don't have to start from scratch. So that's great to hear. I think that'll definitely make the transition for a lot of folks who are going beyond the initial, maybe they complete the Learn Pathway and they want to know what's next. There's a lot more here to help people. I mentioned I wanted to get back to DeFi, and the reason about that is because it seems like, of course, it's been something that's been hugely popular in Ethereum, and there's different, I would say, maturity levels or different approaches on other layer ones. What is your approach to DeFi? Is it you want to start from scratch? You want to bridge in from other networks? And how would you say where things are currently right now, and what are the opportunities that you see with DeFi on Celo?
Yeah, DeFi is super interesting. There's tons of experimentation going on many other chains. But the way I've been viewing it recently is like there's, like I said, a lot of experimentation on Ethereum, and we're seeing things that are working and things that aren't working. So we're getting some signal that like certain tools would be useful to be deployed onto Celo. And there's like a lot of these contracts, smart contracts that are written for Ethereum can just be deployed right onto Celo. Celo is an EVM compatible chain, so any smart contract language that compiles to EVM bytecode is relevant and can be deployed onto Celo. We're looking at tools on Ethereum that really support our mission in terms of like creating the conditions of prosperity for everybody, and like what are the core components of this financial system that create these conditions of prosperity. So there's an interesting project right now called Lula that's looking at forking Aave and deploying it onto Celo. And this is interesting because it allows people access to basic financial services in terms of lending and borrowing. So people even with like one cUSD can put their cUSD into a lending market and start earning interest on their cUSD. Or they can post their cUSD as collateral and actually take out a loan without having a bank account. So they're getting these basic financial services that they may not have access to without a bank account. So there are some DeFi applications that make sense to redeploy onto Celo in the sense of like accessing liquidity and like just making it easy for people that are already in the Celo ecosystem to use those tools. But it's also one of our core initiatives for this year is like building bridges, not walled gardens. Like we are all about interoperating with other blockchains. And it's interesting to think about how Ethereum is good at certain things and Celo can be good at different things. I mentioned earlier that I see the audience for Ethereum and the audience for Celo being slightly different. Depending on what you want to build, like maybe it makes sense for you to deploy onto Ethereum and not onto Celo. Celo is not a replacement for Ethereum. I think of it like kind of like a supercharged ETH sidechain. We're working on the bridges. The bridges don't exist yet, but they're coming. And if you want to create an app that will benefit by like smooth payment rails for mobile users and just globally, maybe Celo is a good place to like for your home of your application. There will be wrapped tokens on Ethereum, or wrapped tokens from Ethereum can come to Celo. But yeah, I don't think Celo is like a catch-all. Like, it doesn't make sense for everything on Ethereum to come to Celo.
Got it. That makes sense. Do you think you'll see, or have you seen someone making the equivalent of an AMM like a Uniswap? Do you think that will be something that makes sense on Celo?
Yeah, there are actually teams that are working on that too.
Yep. Okay.
Yep.
Send them our way.
Good. Okay. Yeah, I was just curious about the sort of how you see the state of DeFi, and I agree with you. The sort of bridges, not the walled garden, is probably the right approach. And let's see what makes the most sense to have on Celo. Maybe something else makes more sense to be on a different network. That makes sense. Okay, great. Thanks for that.
You mentioned a couple times now that education has been a big focus. It's time for a bit of self-promotion. I'm curious, how did you get to choose Learn as a partner, and how does it compare to what you've seen?
Yeah, we were talking at the beginning, we were talking about experimentation. One of the reasons why we care a lot about experimentation is because I don't think there is a clear idea of how to onboard developers into the space yet. Like, I think that access, for example, means something different depending on where you're from. And when we saw Figment Learn, it was just like so clear for us that this was an amazing solution for people to first be incentivized to learn, then sort of like on board, just like find an easy path to start doing something that feels tangible, right? To play with things and learn as you build things. And the other factor that I love personally was that people could just compare chains. They could compare how easy it is to develop on a project, and sort of like instead of fighting over developers, it's just like what Josh was saying. Like there's going to be layer one projects that serve certain purposes and certain target audiences. So I think that's exactly what Figment Learn can help people sort of like understand, sort of like have a broad understanding of how these layer one projects can work together or can serve their particular target audiences, right? Yeah, I don't know if I missed something, Josh. Yeah.
That makes sense. And I agree to your point. I think our goal is just to grow the pie for everyone, and to grow the Web3 market, and to onboard more devs versus just converting Ethereum devs to one network or another. So I'm definitely glad we're aligned there. And how do you see Learn playing a role in your community building strategy? What would be your perfect outcome in 6 months?
Yeah. I would love to see thousands of people completing the tutorials, of course. But something that I'm particularly excited about is that with this program, people can also build their own tutorials. So we have a specific reward for that. And that is exciting to me because again, going back to the idea of representation, I would love to see people building the tutorials they think their community needs, right? So that's one thing that is exciting to me, how this could be sort of like a way for us to empower a community to build the content they would like to see. And yeah, like always like push for people to take ownership on the technology they want to see built, right?
Makes sense. So everyone who's listening, please start writing tutorials. Let's make Daniel happy.
Okay, we've started to get a number of questions from the audience in the Ask a Question section. We'll start answering those. I'll try to see if we can summarize a few of them and answer them. There's a couple people asking about creating your own stablecoin, maybe for your own local fiat currency. Anything you guys want to say about that?
Yeah, so there are definitely mechanisms in the ecosystem to create any stable token. It is a decent amount of work, and like we do put a lot of thought in terms of like which stable tokens we're going to build and the priorities. But it goes through our governance process, which is just open to the public. It's currently our governance process is currently managed on GitHub. So you can like create a governance proposal, and then it will be slated for discussion in one of the governance meetings. But like depending on the type of stable coin, I'm just thinking of like if you wanted to create a stable coin that was pegged to the Canadian dollar, that would require another an on-chain governance proposal, because we would need to set up a Oracle system that would give a price feed to the on-chain contracts. But there are other stable currencies and options for stable currencies in terms of pegging them. Like there are currencies that are pegged to the US dollar, in which case you can just create a smart contract yourself, and then it accepts cUSD deposits and then mints new tokens based on whatever that exchange rate is. Or if you want to create your own stable currency has additional functionality from cUSD, you can just create smart contracts and deploy those immediately. It doesn't require any permission.
Got it. There's a couple questions which maybe I would classify as let's talk about on-ramps and off-ramps. Let's say you're a merchant and you want to accept cUSD as a payment for something. What are the options for then converting into your local currency? Or is that the wrong idea altogether? Is the idea you should keep it in cUSD? Just what is the current what are the current approaches for merchants who want to accept payment, and then what do you think it might evolve into in the future?
Yeah, I mean, early days it's hard. I mean, we don't have the ecosystem of cUSD where it's widely accepted. So if you are receiving Celo dollars, you can't necessarily buy the things you need or want with Celo dollars. But we are like, even in the past few months, we've made like substantial progress in terms of just integrating with local exchanges, like crypto exchanges all around the world. So you would just go through the same process, like if you were accepting payments in Bitcoin, you wanted to convert your Bitcoin to local currency.
Yep. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, I wanted to. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Daniel. Yeah, go ahead.
Just to keep using the example of impact market, we also recently launched a reward program where people get Celo on their Valora wallets if they hold TUSD, and that particular reward program, it's creating this interesting effect for impact market where merchants don't want to to cash out, right? It just makes sense for them to save cUSD for a while. So I do think that there is a future where that might change, right? But of course, as Josh said, we are putting massive efforts into building these on and off ramps everywhere. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. So hopefully in the future, there'll be more local exchanges where you can get it and you can kind of handle the on-ramps and off-ramps if needed there. There's a question which is phrased using the word interchange, but imagine a future where there are, through the governance process, more stable coins are available. You're talking about the euro, and we have cUSD right now, and maybe there's more in the future. Do you think there'll be something, I don't know if it's going to be like Balancer or something else to sort of exchange stable coins within Celo, or do you think that they'll just be treated as separate tokens altogether?
Yeah, so we talked about like an AMM being developed on Celo.
Mm-hmm.
People will be able to create liquidity pools there, and there will be on-chain exchanges. Yep. The way the current mechanism works for like creating stable coins, like there's a Celo reserve, which includes like a basket of cryptocurrencies right now. I think it includes Bitcoin, Ethereum, DAI, and Celo, which is the native asset. And then there's an on-chain exchange like inspired by Uniswap, where you just send Celo and then cUSD is minted. And then if you want to send it back the other way, you can just send it cUSD, it's burned, and you get Celo back. So there's already this on-chain exchange mechanism, and as there are more stable coins, you can just do this with the reserve without even creating markets. But I would imagine there will be markets between stable coins as well in the AMMs and the DEXs. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Continuing on with the questions, we're almost through with some of the user questions, but one is more technical, and it's about programming languages. The question is, can we use Python or other languages like Rust or Go? Maybe what is the state of that today, and how might that look different in the future?
Yeah, so we definitely have the most focus on our TypeScript SDKs. There's a community member, Blaze Tech, created a Java SDK as well as a Python SDK. I haven't dug through those completely to explore all the functionality, but they're based on the contract kit, the JavaScript implementation. So it includes a lot of the core functionality there in terms of connecting to the network, getting access to the core contracts. But yeah, there's definitely room for improvement here in terms of expanding to Rust and things like that.
Got it. Okay. So yeah, so if anyone else is looking to make bindings or different sort of SDKs, there might be 2 community submitted examples to go from, and of course there's the canonical JavaScript one, which you could base it off of. So the answer is yeah, maybe someone else could build it, maybe you could build it. Okay, that makes sense. I want to ask, we talked a lot about things that might be coming in the future. What are the sort of top 3 things that you're excited to see built on Celo, whether they are more infrastructure level tools, whether they are specific apps? What kind of things would you hope to see built using Celo?
Yeah, personally, I'm really interested in seeing increased access, which means really leveraging these usability improvements that are available at a protocol level. As I mentioned, our community is on the newer side and we're growing. So we don't have this ecology of wallets that are available to people in different environments. So notably, one is a browser-based wallet similar to MetaMask, which provides a very, very familiar experience for Ethereum developers that allows developers to create a more complex desktop-based applications. These are coming. We do have alpha and beta versions out, but I'm excited to see more development in this space. Additionally, some of these DeFi primitives that allow people to plug into Mula is a good example where you can get access to basic financial services that we take for granted in the Western world. But somebody with $1 Celo dollar can now leverage some of these things. These projects are in development. I'm really excited to see them go live and actually start acquiring users to see where these audiences are, where's their traction, what places are finding this the most useful. And then one last thing is just we've mentioned Impact Market several times. They have they're essentially running a really big experiment in terms of a UBI mechanism that's going in a place that's totally unfamiliar with crypto. The people don't really understand where the money's coming from, but they're grateful that it's happening. And I'm excited to see like more experimentation and like exploration in this design space of like, how can we distribute money in completely new ways? Like before cryptocurrencies, there was no way to get essentially dollars to 10,000 people in a pretty economical way. I mean, the team is a handful of people, and they're distributing like, I think they've done over $200,000 worth of disbursements, and it's like pretty amazing when you look at where they were a year ago. I think they were just getting started a year ago, and now they've like already made this much progress. So like, there's gonna be a lot of exploration in this space, and we don't know what's gonna work yet, but we're just gonna be able to watch all this happen on chain and take the successes and replicate them in new places. It's really exciting.
Got it. Okay, so we talked a bit about Learn and the pathway we're kicking off today, but the C Labs team has a lot going on, and there's lots of places that other people can participate. Whether you're a developer or you want to build a startup, what are the other things that people can do? What are the programs available where people can get involved with Celo?
Sure. So a few programs that you can start engaging with now are Gitcoin. We have a massive campaign coming on Gitcoin with a hackathon next week on building things for mobile. So, and lots of bounties for people to learn, for people to engage, for people to contribute. We have a grants program that is closing. The third round is closing, but the next round is going to open in a few months, maybe a couple of months. So that's another opportunity for people to apply with specific ideas, a specific technology they would like to see in the ecosystem. We didn't talk about that today, but there is a program called Celo Camp for people who are looking to become founders that have ideas that can be built on Celo. So things like what we discussed today, Impact Market and Mula, all those projects and teams went through Celo Camp, and where you can get coaching, funding, just like a bunch of nice things for you to like build a tangible product, put something out there that is worth your time and like brings impact to the world. And I think that's it. Maybe I'm forgetting something, but those are the programs that I can think of right now for you to participate with.
Well, there's certainly a lot. You definitely a lot to keep people busy. And I know that you've had a couple batches of Celo Camp already, and there's a new one coming up. Is that right?
Yeah, there's a new one coming up. There's going to be a pre-camp hackathon, I believe. So that's coming up soon. I actually don't have a date for that, but I will get it to you as soon as I get it. Yeah, but soon, again, like next month or next 2 months or something like that.
And can people still apply, or is the application window closed for that one?
The application round hasn't started, I believe. So there's going to be space for people to apply. Yeah, and time for people to apply. Yeah.
Okay, great. So I think we've got most of the questions from the audience so far, and we've gone through a lot of what I was hoping to chat about today. But I always like to close with the same question, which is what I call the magic wand question. And so if you had a magic wand, you could change anything about Celo or blockchain in general. What would you do to improve things if you had a magic wand?
So,
go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, coming from the education space, I know Yannick will love this answer. But I think like sharing knowledge is honestly the biggest hurdle right now. I was talking about how complex and complicated these systems are, and it's like the onboarding is kind of hard for developers. Like there needs to be sufficient motivation for people to get through all the hurdles to become successful in this space. So I think there's this interesting thing that happens when people get a little bit invested in a project, and then there's this cryptocurrency aspect where they can see these financial rewards as well, which kind of like gives that little nudge of like, hey, keep going, like there's something here. And yeah, just making it like once people get to a certain point, they're like, oh, this makes a lot of sense. This can actually provide a lot of value. And then there's like a no going back point. It's like, oh, I'm like kind of sold on this. Like I see the value. I'm going to maybe not like work on this actively full time, but like I'm keeping my eye on this space forever now. And there's this point with like we've seen with a lot of Web 2 developers is like getting to that point is hard. People are like, oh, this is like weird, funny internet money. This is all a bubble. It's not. It's just like a interesting solution to a computer science problem. There's no valid like real world use case. I think getting through those hurdles is hard. And if I could just like get everybody to that like baseline of knowledge in terms of like, hey, like there's something here, let's keep going. That would be huge. It would be changing. But we're making small incremental changes through programs like this. So
great.
Yeah. Very similarly, I think that my dream would be to have something like learning paths for every single kind of person that wants to build on Celo. Like we discussed about the Web 2 route. Like what if someone comes from that world, wants to implement payments on their app? I saw a question about that on the chat. I would love to have a route for them where they can quite easily find the solution they're looking for. And same for someone who wants to be a validator, someone who wants to run a node. Like we, again, just to reiterate, we would love to see people doing that from everywhere. Like we would like to become a like truly global organization. So that's sort of like a challenge we have ahead. So that will be my magic wand wish. Yeah.
Well, thanks for that, Josh. Thanks for that, Daniel. Great. So I learned a lot today, and I appreciate you spending time, and I appreciate the people who joined and also shared all the questions. So I'm very excited to see what kind of new people get introduced to Celo, what kind of apps get built, and also hopefully we can also improve the tutorials that we have, and then hopefully if people get excited and want to keep going further down the path, if they get past Josh's tipping point where they realize, wow, there's a lot here, there's more to it, then you can submit your own tutorials as well. And that'd be great. That really gets to part of what we're after, which is what I call sort of peer-to-peer learning, which is, if the Figment and the C Labs team can step back and let the community take it away, then I think that's what we're here for. So thanks again, Josh. Thanks again, Daniel. Sure. I think it's been a great session. Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right. See you guys. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.